This is how I would learn to code if I could start over. I started coding about 5 years ago, and since then I've been able to refine a system which has helped me learn how to code about 50 times faster than when I first started. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I've also coached many people who went through the same mistakes when first learning how to code. In this video, I'm going to explain a step-by-step process on how I would learn how to code if I started from scratch. I'm also going to recommend some resources and talk you through how to use tools like ChatGPT to supercharge your learning, and also recommend some first beginner projects for you to try and practice your coding skills. And also, most importantly, I'm going to talk about the mindset that you need for you to be able to learn how to code effectively and very quickly. I would suggest picking Python because it's a fairly simple language to get into, and also it's one of the most versatile languages there are. It's being used in all sorts of things, including artificial intelligence, automation, and even web development. This gives you a lot of options for you to do a project, and it's also a great language for you to have on your resume or your CV for you to land your first coding job. The main topics you should cover when learning Python to begin with are variables, conditional statements, while loops and for loops, lists, dictionaries, libraries, and creating your own functions. With just these basics, you'll be able to do a lot of projects. And to be honest, for a long time, I've only had these basics and was able to manage to land multiple coding jobs. Let's talk about some resources I recommend. I personally recommend using interactive resources to learn how to code, such as Code Academy and Free Code Camp. The reason I recommend using these interactive resources is I see learning how to code as kind of like learning a language. And the best way for you to learn a language isn't memorizing a dictionary of words. It's about actually using the language. I'll go into a bit more detail about this system of learning later on in this video. I also use these philosophies when I was first building my interactive video course. So if you like, you could check that out. If you prefer to read books or do courses, these could also be quite powerful. In fact, I like to use books from time to time to supplement my main learning. These are some of the books and courses I personally use and would recommend. My main point here is that if you do decide to use books or courses, make sure you set aside time for you to actually use and apply the coding skills that you learn in those chapters or those courses. Because actually applying the coding language is the main way that you're going to learn how to actually code. Now, the most important thing that I use to speedrun learning coding languages is a system. When I'm learning the basics of a coding language, I'll try not to spend more than 2 weeks learning those fundamentals. This obviously varies depending on how much time you could spend on a day-to-day basis, but I'd recommend at least spending an hour or two on learning a coding language a day, especially at the beginning, because this will allow you to see progress on a day-to-day basis. And if you spend any less time, let's say you spent 10 or 15 minutes, you'd often spend the next day trying to remember what you learned the previous day. Now, my next tip for this system is when you're actively learning, let's say I'm learning a topic like variables in Python, I would read the paragraph or watch the video and try to understand it best I can. I'm not going to try to write everything down or try to memorize anything at this point. Just try to have some sort of a basic understanding. If there's a part that you don't understand or you have some questions about, that's good. Write those things down on a notepad. What you're going to do is use a tool like ChatGPT, where you copy the part that you didn't understand and paste it into ChatGPT and say to ChatGPT to try to explain it to you in a more simple way. I'll be honest, when I first started learning how to code, the thing that frustrated me the most and what I realize now is that a lot of coding resources like to overcomplicate things. So whenever you can and you don't understand anything, don't blame yourself. Copy what the resource is saying and paste it into ChatGPT and ask them to explain it more simply. Anyway, once you've done this and you grasp the concept to some degree, go straight into using that concept or using that skill. Use it a couple times, maybe do a couple examples, but try to also experiment. And once you've done this a few times, you have to tell yourself, I am done with this topic. I understand this concept, I'm going to now move on. The reason this is so important is because a lot of people, including myself, when I first learned how to do a certain topic, I'd go down rabbit holes in thinking I need to learn everything about this topic. And once you learn more, you start to understand that there's more and more that you don't understand. And then you'd realize that you actually have to spend a lot more time to try and understand a topic to the 100% scale, when the most important part is just learning the 80%, because that 80% is what you're actually going to use. And then later down the line, when you understand the foundations, you could start to understand or learn more about that topic. But for now, just focus on the 80%. And remember, we're trying to understand, not memorize. That's not the point for learning how to code. Reality is, almost all coders, including myself, forget stuff in coding all of the time. And whenever you want to get a recap or a reminder on how to do something, you could do a quick Google search or a ChatGPT prompt for you to get that reminder. So understanding is the key here, not memorization. What you need to do is repeat this process for all of the topics in the fundamentals of learning that language. Now, once you're done with the basics, you need to go on to now creating a project. This is probably the most important step for you to be able to actually learn how to code, because now you have created something that you could use to not just tell other people or show other people that you know how to code, but you could also have this as evidence to yourself that you have learned the programming language. And often you could go back to your projects and try to reread or try to re-understand something in case you forget anything in the future. My best advice for your first coding project is try to pick something that you find useful or find something that you find interesting. A combination of both of these is ideal. If you can't come up with any ideas, that's no problem. I'm going to link some resources below which recommend some coding projects that you could start off with. And a lot of time this is actually good because a lot of these projects already exist, so you could cross-reference your code with the code of the complete project to see where you went wrong. But the key is to start the project with the smallest possible goal and then slowly expand on this project until you get the full desired outcome. For example, my first project had the end goal of creating a productivity app that could provide recommendations and tips based on my internet web usage. So that's a big project because I want to create an app. But instead of thinking that I had to complete this project, I started with my smallest possible goal, which was find a way to get my internet data into my code. Then from there, I slowly expanded on this project